and welcome to this meeting of the Audit and Transparency Committee. My name is Councillor Joe Hargreaves, and I'm chair of this committee, and I will be chairing tonight's meeting. This event is being live streamed on YouTube, and members of the public and media are welcome to watch the meeting remotely and listen to the discussions taking place at the meeting. So I'd like to welcome everybody to meeting room number 1 at Kensington Town Hall and everybody watching on YouTube. And before we proceed with the meeting, I think I would ask members of the committee, please to make sure your mobiles are switched on to silent or switched off. I think particularly at tonight's meeting, it will be appropriate for us to start with 72 seconds of silence. Remember those who lost their lives in the Grenfell tragedy. Would you join me in those seconds of silence, please? Thank you very much. Thank you. So we now move to the agenda as it stands. I'd like to ask for any apologies for absence. We've had apologies from Councillor Claire Simmons. No other apologies. Everybody else is here. Thank you. Declaration of interest. Does any member have an interest to declare tonight's meeting? No matters to declare. Thank you. Move to the matters, a meeting of the minutes of the previous meeting. The draft minutes of the last meeting that took place on the 22nd of July were circulated on the 21st of August. Unless the committee disagrees, I will sign these as a correct record. I think we can sign those. Thank you. You. We now move on to item number 4 on the agenda, which is a Grenfell Tower inquiry, particularly implications for the council. The Grenfell Tower inquiry published its phase 2 report on the 4th of September 2024. The committee report sets out the implications for the council and suggests key lines of inquiry. It includes key consideration of further discussion with officers, elected members, and most importantly, bereaved survivors and residents. The committee tonight has been asked to comment on the report before it is considered by the leadership team on the 25th of September. I'd like to welcome Maxine Holsworth, Chief Executive, and ask Maxine to present the report to us, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to see you all. So this report is our first report after the Grenfell Tower inquiry reported on the 4th of September. That report on the 4th of September is 1,700 pages long. What you have here is a distillation of our assessment of what that report says about the council. The report that you have, which is just over 50 pages, includes a lot of direct quotes. So obviously the inquiry has spent many years and looked at a large amount of evidence to reach the conclusions that it has reached, and those conclusions are very carefully worded. So what the team who've been looking at it here and tried to do is to report that very faithfully without over-interpretation, but to highlight the areas that we need to focus on. So I wanted just to bring to your attention a couple of things before taking any questions, which is obviously this will be looked at in various fora, including the leadership team on Wednesday evening. There is a list of risk and assurance mechanisms at 4.7 in the cover reports, where we are proposing to review the Council's risk management strategy and strategic risk register, the internal audit plan and the annual governance statements, the local code of corporate governance, and annual reports on health and safety and procurement arrangements. So one thing that it would be really good to get your views on is whether that feels like the right list at this point of the assurance and key risk and assurance documents and processes that we need to look at. Because the inquiry has a good deal to say about risk management and assurance, and the main areas of finding in that are in the main report. Section 3 is called the findings, and that covers the 4 areas which are the most relevant to the council. Those areas being the Kensington Chelsea Tenant Management Organisation and its relationship with the council. And that is important both because the council, the people who lived in Grenfell Tower were council tenants and leaseholders, the management arrangements for the stock didn't change that fact. But also because since 2018, the council and the consultation with tenants and residents, the council now runs those housing management services directly. So lessons about the tenant management organisations are lessons for the council for the housing management services we run. Section 5 in the inquiry report, and this report deals with the management of fire safety at Grenfell Tower. And that looks at both the responsibilities of the council and of the tenant management organisation. Section 6 in this report covers the refurbishment of the tower. That is a very long section of over 300 pages in the main report. The main focus in relation to the council is the council's building control department and the failings of the building control department, which were things that the council admitted to the inquiry and are listed within this report. And then finally, section 7 deals with the aftermath of fire, where and that very much concerns the council. That whole chapter is very much about council response, and some very strong findings and judgments about council at that time. I think it's worth just highlighting in developing this report on the implications for the council, which has been done by a small project team. The guiding principles that they have been working to are not questioning the inquiry's findings. So the inquiry's findings are taken as truth. Obviously, witnesses to the inquiry will be looking to find their evidence within it and hoping that it's faithfully represented. We are taking all of that as read, and the inquiry's findings as the truth. The council is committed to the Hillsborough Charter, which was a commitment the council made in 2017, and the charter commits the council to place the public interest above its own reputation and to approach public scrutiny, including inquiries and inquests, with candour and in an open and honest and transparent way. So those are sort of 2 key principles which we've been following in pulling this report together. The final thing that I'd just like to draw your attention to is the proposals for developing the formal response. So there is a timetable towards the end of the report which sets out the where both this report is going, including tonight's meeting, but also meetings with bereaved survivors in the community to develop the final response. Just trying to find it. Page 56 of the report. It has both and what's already happened. So today we have had a drop-in session with bereaved and survivors, and also a drop-in session with local residents, and then there's a couple more coming up this week. Those are not really to share the implications report, but just to hear back from local people and bereaved and survivors about how, about their feelings about the report, the findings, and what they want to see come from it. But in October and November, we will hold 4 facilitated meetings, 2 for the immediate community and 2 for bereaved and survivors, which will help to inform the formal response that the council has committed to putting together. And the formal response is due at the leadership team on the 13th of November, and then full council on the 27th of November. I'll leave my comments there, Chairman.
Thank you very much. I would say that I've had a note from Councillor Simmons with some comments on them. There are comments that she tended to make also at the meeting of the Overburden Scrutiny Committee last week. And what I will do is ask for these comments to be included in our comments tonight, so that they are part of our report, if you like, to the final report. So, members of the committee, I think this is really your opportunity to, well, Nicola, haven't we? Your opportunity to really focus on this committee generally, and what is it that we need to do more of in light of the report. Maxime, you mentioned those specific areas of reports that come before us and that we need to perhaps look at. So this
I am pleased to say that we now, sorry, the echoes, every time Yusuf opens that cupboard, it gets more echoey. I'll just wait a second.
sorry.
No, that's okay. I know you're trying to sort it. So the whole of the resilience profession, which is another name for emergency response, both in government and in London regional government, has been very focused on the things that need to change. There's something called the resilience framework, and I think the self-assessment against that framework comes here. So that is one measure for you. So I take a huge personal interest in this, and what I can tell you is that we have got a rota that is an emergency response rota staffed by both senior staff and all kind of frontline staff for all of those roles that are recognised in resilience 24/7, 365 days a year. There is always, at any point, day or night, somebody on gold duty, so who's in charge of an emergency response, who can contact me at any time. Somebody on silver duty, and then all of the respective roles around emergency rest centres. We have to keep those people trained, and we have to carry out exercises. And we did an emergency rest centre exercise 3 months ago. We've had various different exercises that we've done in recent months. So I think our preparedness has really progressed. I don't want to overclaim though, and in our self-assessment, I think we've put ourselves as developing in some areas. We've not said that we're there. The London Resilience Forum is considering the implications of the Grenfell Inquiry report at its next meeting in early October. That is chaired by the Mayor of London's Chief of Staff. So we will be inputting into that as well. And I think you have picked up on something that everybody's seeing as a massive challenge, which is how to have the right amount of accommodation available at short notice. Obviously, when Grenfell Tower fire happened, it was in the middle of summer. It was just before Wimbledon, I think, and so lots of the hotels were booked up. So that was something at that particular time. Cladding on council blocks. There is no cladding on council blocks that needs to be removed and remediated. There are in the borough as a whole. There are, I don't have them at my fingertips, but there are some blocks that are going through the process of remediation at the moment that I'm aware of, and health and safety more generally, I think is a really good question. We have an annual report on health and safety, but I'm looking at this inquiry report and thinking, is there more that we need to do on health and safety? Do we need to do some sort of review of our health and safety arrangements overall?
Thank you. And that's something to very pleasant. Maxine, where in the council does the sort of exercises you do, where on a democratic basis is that scrutinised and that reviewed and that? So where does the democratic process get reassurance that what you're doing in that area?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, and one that we perhaps need to elevate the focus on. So we have to report on that through to the London Resilience Forum, but that isn't a democratic process. Here, I think assurance on it is comes to this committee. So the completion of, but David's nodding vigorously. So the completion of the self-assessment
framework.
framework.
And it was a deep dive, I think, before this committee cycle actually. So we need to look at revisiting that around resilience arrangements. So again, I think we can bring both those.
But it doesn't sit with a different kit. It doesn't sit with any of the other select committees. So, and it hasn't been a focus of one of the other select committees to date.
But then we are looking today at what more we should be doing as a committee, and I certainly haven't had a sense. And if it's contained, we get a lot of reports, and therefore someone can always say, well, it's contained in that report. But have we examined it? Have we questioned it? Have we? And a lot of the reports we get, it's the instruction is to note the report. Yeah. And I'm never quite sure what status to note is.
Yeah. So I should say that the lead member for resilience is the leader. So that responsibility sits with her, and the overall responsibility for resilience sits with me as the chief executive, although various functions are delegated, and the executive director who leads on this area is both Stanford Francis for environment and neighbourhoods. We do, as I say, we do hold exercises, and members of the committee would be welcome to observe a future exercise if you wanted to. And we have also held sessions about local councillors' roles in resilience, which I appreciate is a different thing from assurance, but does talk about ward members' involvement in so what you do basically if there is an emergency that happens in your ward.
Okay, thank you. Andrew.
Can I have a reflection looking back? We're going to concentrate on what the impact of this on this committee and what we didn't do. So your first line on council's risk management strategy and strategic risk register. Just by background, I think I'm a member of the committee for 15 plus years, a long time. The risk management strategy and the strategic risk register and the operational risks have been a constant thing on our agenda. It's been constantly work in progress. And it's interesting to just reflect that some of the risks that come out in this report that we haven't handled properly, we weren't aware of. Yeah. They were big unknowns in terms of our committee process. And we've had a lot of focus on developing risk management and developing the risk register. But often committees have just got in the mire of the reports and not just as we want them. They don't have the right information when you actually drill down to a real crisp understanding of what the risks are. Or actually more lack of clarity emerges than clarity. So I think there's something about the whole risk management process that didn't identify these issues to this committee. But this committee I've all seen as the top level committee. We're kind of concerned that there's a process that's being done in the organisation that's allowing other people to identify and manage their risks properly. So we want to step back from an operational committee, even in governance terms. So that's probably the biggest observation I've got of the work of this committee. There's a lot of unknowns in there, and perhaps there shouldn't have been so many unknowns. The one particular, the big area is how it came that the tenant management organisation and the failings in that organisation really didn't surface in this committee.
Okay, I'm going to pause you there. Tara, are you on the same theme?
Yes, so follow on. So I was wondering whether there'd been a sort of risk top-down sort of risk workshop, whether that happens either in the executive or in the democratic process or in this committee, where you literally kind of have the dreaded yellow post-it notes and try and think what the kind of various risks could be, not just sadly the cladding risk, but other things, that contingencies that could happen. That was one point which follows on from what you were saying. And the other things, I suppose, so following on is kind of risk training for kind of people from the bottom to the top. Yeah, I mean, sometimes you get good risk awareness at the top, but some of the kind of people who are doing the work at the bottom don't necessarily, I'm sure you probably already know this, but don't necessarily know how to feed into that process. Then I suppose the other ones were health and safety came up. Where does that, I mean, do you have kind of health and safety deep dive? Does that happen in this committee or some other committee, or including kind of possible reports you get from third parties, third line assurance of health and safety matters?
Yes, absolutely.
Do you want to start off with the risk management?
Why don't you start off with the risk insurance and I'll come in after?
So, I mean, actually, so I think, Andrew, you're right. So, in terms of risk management, the corporate risk registers was pre-fire, didn't recognise or identify any of the key risks that materialised at the fire, tragedy. I think the strategic risk register now does have most of the elements there. So, we have key risks around statutory compliance with health and safety requirements in our tenanted properties. We have emergency planning and resilience risk. We have risks around both resident safety, but also well-being of residents affected by the Grenfell tragedy. So I think there's a number of things there which are there, but I think we do need to take time to reflect on now whether we've got the right risks in the register. So back to that exercise again. I think we did do that back in 2018, 2019. So that's where the currents and risks on the risk register emanated from, by taking that sort of start again point. I think, Andrew, you're right. The risk strategy is something that has been a work in progress. I think we do need to reflect on now to come back as quickly as we can with our learning from the inquiry report on what risk management strategy needs to focus on. And then follows from that the training and rolling out training for staff. We're implementing a system to make sure we've got consistent risk registers from bottom to top. So we're actually reviewing both the risk registers and departmental levels, and also how they feed into the executive management team and the strategic risk register. I think, again, although the failing of the TMO specifically, again, wasn't identified on the previous risk registers before the fire, we do now have a couple of strategic risks around the management of commercial relationships, which are broad. And I think this is where, again, the learning for me about TMO elements is not just about the council providing housing management services now, which the TMO did, but also how we manage those relationships with third-party providers to make sure the safety of residents, safety of life is paramount. The way in which the contracts are managed is robust. Contracts perform in terms of the way they're expected to. So again, the Procurement Act, which is now being delayed until February 25, we are rolling out a new contract management framework, which again deals with how third-party providers need to be managed effectively by contract management organisation. Looking at community of practice to make sure there's training, awareness, good practice is shared, and also opportunities to raise concerns where contracts aren't performing. And the new Act will have more transparency in terms of contracts that aren't performing well. So again, this committee and every stream committee will see that information as we go forward as well.
Thank you.
But if I might just come in addition to that. So I think this key question that you both highlighted, kind of how do we know what we don't know, and and how do you at committee level dive into those issues and provide assurance? And obviously, committee level isn't the only line of defence. The idea is that it should provide some assurance and some triangulation with other matters, and the inquiry report in particular points out that it does single out the chief executive of the TMO as not as being reluctant to report to housing and property scrutiny some fire safety enforcement notices and also some concerns about fire safety. So the inquiry report does conclude that it would be very difficult for that scrutiny to be able to unearth that, given that the questions that they did have on their agenda were not being responded to in an open way. I guess what I ask myself running the organisation is about how you ensure competence and openness, because a theme from the inquiry report is that sort of not really having sufficient level of professional competence to manage the relationship with tenant management organisation, which was itself running 10,000 properties, and perhaps not treating attendance at a committee as treating it as something where you needed to give the committee, perhaps what it might be helpful for them to hear, rather than to highlight risks and concerns. I think our formal response will cover some of this. I think there has been a great deal of work on that at the moment, both in terms of the professional qualifications that we expect from the people who look after health and safety here, the extent of peer review and external review that we have sought in the last 6-7 years. I think do and should give us a greater level of confidence about the focus that safety and health and safety have in the organisation. But I think we can always do more, and that your idea of risk workshops at different levels within the organisation, I think, is something that we should follow up.
I just sort of slightly follow on from that, then I'll come to John. This bit about oversight of external organisations that do work on our behalf. Now, the TMO was probably the largest, but we have numerous organisations that do work on our behalf. Now, I assume that some of the oversight of that goes through the individual scrutiny committee, but there are going to be others, aren't there? I'm just wondering where the democratic process comes in for reviewing that and looking at that, and do we need to be doing more of that for those organisations that don't sit within a specific scrutiny committee? And just that external report about Memoli and Butler, was there any scrutiny of that report? If not, why not? We don't need to focus on that because that was there. But how can we make sure that the work done by external organisations is fully scrutinised?
So I think the Memoli and Butler report, which was a report on the kind of resident engagement and the relationship with residents, which was on for the TMO, commissioned by the TMO, but in the inquiry's judgment, not acted upon, is a good lesson for us all. And actually, in the findings, the chapter which we don't focus on in our report, the chapter about the fire service also highlights the fire service as having commissioned reports and undertaken reviews, but not acted upon the review, and really points out the need to make sure that reviews are acted upon and tracked and actions tracked. In relation to that assurance around, and the TMO was a kind of particular framing of an organisation that had in fact been set up originally through a tenant vote. So, and with the modular management agreement, its relationship with the council was not strictly contractual. It was through the modular management agreement. Our big contractual arrangements with our leisure providers, with our parks service, with our waste contractor, with our adult social care providers, they all have their own contract management mechanisms which are held within departments, and the respective committees will normally expect the big contractors to attend at least once a year. Again, though, those sort of what could be really reasonably expected to do to kind of get under the skin of that performance. It does include things like that. My job is making sure that the performance management arrangements for the contractors are good, that we've got some key performance indicators that are reported to the council as a whole that refer to the performance of our external contractors delivering on our behalf, making sure that our staff and on occasions members where it's suitable are got eyes on the issues. And one thing for elected members, I would say, is a really good barometer for service delivery is what your constituents raise with you, and in many ways, so things that are coming up through ward councillors, from surgeries, and from emails from residents are often a really good indicator of where services aren't working.
I love that phrase in the lack of curiosity and imagination, and I just wonder how, as a committee, do we need to be more curious and do we need to be more imaginative? And if so, how? John, I'm conscious that then I'll come from you.
It's strange because every time I think of an area I want to talk about, either you or somebody else asks questions. For me, the thing I really challenge is the fact that we only have a certain number of meetings a year. 2 of them are taken up with the accounts. And you're looking at the sheer breadth of issues that could ensure the Functions Committee. But actually, where is the time? Regularly, we will get the same policy that comes towards this committee that we'll look at. And as the chairman says, it's a tick box exercise. But actually, is it therefore pushing something that is actually more critical, that really should be? But the process says, oh no, we bring this committee every year. And actually, therefore, that goes on. Whereas the things that we would be ordinarily curious about aren't. I know with the risk register, you were reforming it because previously, basically, every sort of top 10 issue had been put on across each department, and some of the departments have more than 10 issues. I think it would be good to see that again and actually potentially have an in-depth look. But I suspect I share it for everybody. None of us are risk review specialists. I mean, we can look at it, but it's what's not on there, or indeed where things sit and how often they're looked at. But it is that challenge of where's the assurance that actually once it's on the risk register, it is then looked at. It isn't just a tick box exercise. So for me, it's the preparedness for other risks, because as they said with COVID, everybody was prepared for a different pandemic. So we recognise that we can never be perfect in terms of being prepared for everything. Otherwise, we wouldn't be getting on with the day job. But it's getting that balance right between expertise for this committee and the right things to come to this committee, but also having that honesty within both lead members and officers to put their hand up and say, this needs to come before the committee. And I think regularly stuff gets stopped probably before it even gets onto the agenda or the agenda's too full.
I think for me, Chair, I think that's really helpful points. I think perhaps one of the things that needs to add to the list to review is actually the work programme of the committee. So work review as a committee in light of what the inquiry has found, what we do in terms of our final response, and what the key topics you want to see on the agenda for the next 12 months, and how we make sure the reporting is focused in a way that helps you get a good understanding of what those issues are to challenge and then to get assurance. I think there's an opportunity there to do that through.
I think you're right, David. The challenge, isn't it, is the time. We've said on occasion from the risk register, we ought to have every meeting one of the directors to talk about the risk and how them. It hasn't happened, and there's it's not for any bad reason. It's just that if we're going to put this other stuff on the agenda, what are we going to take off, or what are we going to have more meetings, which puts pressure on the whole system. So it's a conundrum, and it was brought up, I think, last week at the overview scrutiny committee, wasn't it? How you fit all the things you need to do into the structure. And I would like us also, David, to review all the reports that come to us during the course of the year, and could they ever be read only? And we read them before the committee and we don't actually spend time. I don't know, but I think we need to we do spend a fair amount of time looking at reports that are to note. I'm not quite sure what value we're adding looking at that, Andrew.
So, well, but coming on just two things. One's a bit historic. So, when you talk about interest in big external contracts or outsourcing arrangements, the TMO was a big outsourcing arrangement. I can't recall whether we had right to audit within TMO.
We did. Yes.
Well, if we did, we only had the most trivial matters reported back to us, because the only one matter I can remember was an audit recommendation came out that a spreadsheet was being used rather than an operational system for analysis of rates. And we were all in a twist just talking about that type of administrative issue, when clearly there was many, many other bigger things wrong in TMO. So we got our sort of risk assessment wrong in terms of where we put our audit emphasis and our right to audit in the TMO. Just the second thing is that this seems a lot of work. Now, I can follow the sort of years as it since it last 7 years, the evolution of better processes over those 7 years, and no doubt there are many that have improvements that have been made over the 7 years, which will contribute to answering some of the inquiries principally. But just looking at this without that knowledge, this seems an enormous exercise.
Yeah.
And I joined the point together really. One, it's just a very big exercise, and I just wonder how realistic we are in scaling the response to the exercise. And then secondly, just our own committee agenda reinforce exactly what you said.
Yeah.
What gets pushed off will allow us to do this, because we can't do it with this on such. Because interesting, in this committee, this is the papers. There's 200 odd pages of stuff on the accounts. And I've commented on an earlier meeting that actually this is pretty strong finance function. We're not getting many issues, but it takes a hell of a long time to read through too, and you get bogged down.
Yeah.
You just don't have the bandwidth, and it tends to be the ad hoc, the exceptional, where there is a fire, but where there is a particularly significant issue, you tend not to have time to do.
I often get concerned on items on our agenda that we have 15 minutes on a mega issue.
Yeah.
Now we're not alone, and I don't know whether there's ever whether we'll ever find a solution to that. But I often feel we don't do real justice to some of the stuff that comes before our committee,
And particularly those that are not sort of mission critical for the committee. It's only the committee to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
By the accountants.
Yes.
Don't push it other people.
So I just wondered, following up that point, whether you ever thought about doing a sort of report at the beginning of the papers that just as a sort of assurance heat map or risk register, and have it sort of RAG rated, and so therefore we can see at a glance what things have happened since the last meeting and what we should be worried about. And that might possibly help us to be able to focus in on some of the kind of things that are worrying you and your staff, and things that have bubbled up through the risk management process or through some of the assurance processes. It could be done on sort of first, second, and third line assurance, that sort of thing. And you probably have thought of this. It's incredibly, it's not better than concerns.
But then that again, I don't want to push this point forward. That's only again, which is right, but it only tells us what the officers think of the issue.
Right.
It doesn't tell us what we think of the
Yeah,
issue
you're quite right.
necessarily.
Okay. It's not a deep dive.
Sydney.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got 3 quick questions, and thank you for your responses. Page 26, the Chair has talked about lack of curiosity in examining matters. 5.12. Sort of make a couple of observations on this. I think that you also mentioned how we get that curiosity at either a committee level or we get it in the officer call to make sure that we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
I want to ask a question about the use of internal audit. But when we look at, as that sentence says, lack of curiosity in examining matters related to fire doors, I myself, since I came on this committee a couple of years ago, have looked at the information we're provided about fire doors. And in the private sector, we would ask, how many doors do you have? How many are you replacing a day? And what's the deadline to get those fixed? And I looked at fire doors in particular because I thought we've had Grenfell, fire doors are quite important. And I've got a number of different answers. So even when the question has been raised, and this is in the Housing Committee, on fire doors specifically, which has been mentioned, I've come away not feeling particularly assured because nobody's been able to tell me how many doors we've got, how many doors have been changed per day, and when we're going to get them all done by. And Dave, you mentioned a couple of things. You said third-party providers' doors and the installation may be done by external companies, and we may have some difficulty in managing that process. But the challenge I push back to the leadership is this is pretty important stuff. We've got to be able to get something like that right. And if we're not getting that right, fire doors, we've got to be able to report back to us where the challenge is and what we're doing to mitigate them. So it's on my first point, I've written down internal audit. Because committees can't meet all the time every day, and the chair and I went on a course on audit and transparency, the internal audit function should really be the internal police looking for people like the TMO who aren't fulfilling what they're supposed to be doing or following up on things on a daily basis, such that they can hold executive directors and departments to account to get things done that need to be done. Because by the time it comes to us in an annual statement of internal audit, that's quite a long time where there could have been changes made by the officers who are here every day, Monday to Friday. So my question is, can we do something on internal audit to make sure that they are doing a lot of the follow-up on a daily basis so it doesn't take 3 months to come to the next committee meeting?
So if I could just take that second point first. So internal audit absolutely is key to understanding the risks in the organisation and looking at kind of how things are managed. And so we have a risk management board that I chair that David informed, where the head of internal audit comes. And limited assurance audits are something that we go over as part of that. And so those are always, so obviously you've got up to substantial, no down to no assurance, but limited assurance audits are ones where, should give you real concern, should be something where you dive in on it. And I think recent example where there was a housing limited assurance audit and then Dan came to account for that. And I do think that we probably need to get sharper at making sure that where there is something where you as a committee are looking at something and we know that there's limited assurance, to make sure that the relevant director comes and actually accounts for that to you, rather than via colleagues and via other officers. I guess I've just been noting down things that could help with this really difficult issue of how you can have that laser-like focus when you've got a kind of morass of important information. Because it's not like the information that you get isn't important, but it's about how you kind of analyse it. I do think there's a kind of a meta level thing, which is about how me and my team of executive directors provide assurance through the businesses that we do, and we could always have a session just specifically on that, where you can fire questions like, well, how do you know about, what do you do about this contractor, and to have it almost maybe paperless even, where you're just getting a sense of, well, what kind of assurance does that executive team offer. But things like the external reviews, I could also, for example, ask all of the exec directors to do a kind of crib sheet of good questions for themed inquiries, so that if you were looking at the topic, this is the kind of question that you should ask about it. But external reviews as well, I think, is something that is a useful tool, one that the council did a lot of probably in 2018, Centre for Public Scrutiny, and a number of other external reviews, according to the Human Rights Commission, LGA. Most recently, we've had a health and safety review in housing by the BSI, the British Safety Institute. That was very positive about their processes. So I guess some things that I think we can do we can work together at doing a better job of both giving committees the tools that might help in delving into issues, but also just working together on what some of those key issues are that you need to look at. I will go back to the point that we talked about earlier, where it was very difficult for the housing and property scrutiny in relation to Grenfell to really understand fire safety risk in particular, because of the lack of information that was coming from the TMO. Last point of fire doors. So I think the housing and property scrutiny have, which you're the vice chair, Councillor Gardner, had a more definitive pitch on that, but it will also be part of our final response. It's a moving feast because more doors are done all the time, and also there are different risk levels. So depending on whether you're looking at all of the properties or just the properties that are higher risk, you get a different, because your denominators is different each time.
I think just to add to your point, Councillor Yankton, so I think we've got to think about the 3 lines of defence or assurance. So frontline management have a clear responsibility to operate services and controls. It's a corporate oversight element, and there's also the internal audit providing independent assurance. I think for me, some of the learning from the inquiry will be about how we got the right key metrics in place for services, whether it's the replacement of fire doors or any other matters. Are we reporting corporately on those key metrics? Or internal audit then regularly assessing the quality of data that underpins the reporting and the controls that allow for that reporting to happen? It may be part of the work as internal audit is looking at some form of continuous audit that gives that ongoing assurance. So rather than doing an audit at a point in time every 2 or 3 years in an area, actually how do we do some more regular testing around some of the key metrics as well to give that assurance? I think there are things for us to take away from the conversation this evening and from the inquiry report, how we shape and do some of our work differently as well.
Can I just follow up on that? Do you think, in light of Councillor Jackson's comments, that actually you should be growing your internal, sort of not just relying on the external team, so that actually they can act in a much more proactive manner? Because, as we know, there is a work programme and there's a 6 months flexible work programme. But actually, if you've still only got the same number of people that you're just moving around the departments, it can never cover that much more work.
So there's 2 elements. One is I think how we work differently. So actually using the resource we have to be more focused. So aspects like continuous audit and things that I've done elsewhere, which I've done elsewhere, where you look at short, sharp, focused pieces of work. We are also growing the in-house team, placing less reliance on external provisions. So we've got that more flexible capacity to do some of this different kind of work in-house. So again, that will help without there being a need for additional resource. I think we need to look at how we use our resource better and smarter to deliver the work we need to do, work with you as a committee, but also in that statement, the unity about the right areas of focus.
And the other quick questions. First one is on page 39, paragraph 7.8, third, the second sentence down. It says, RBKC should have done more to cater for those from diverse backgrounds. So I just like to hear a little bit more about what we've done, actually tackle that. And then the final point is the bullet above 7.6. I'm just reading from lines 2 and 3. RBKC was muddled, slow, indecisive and piecemeal. RBK systems and leaderships were wholly inadequate. My background's in the military, and we would have to make sure that you can't be muddled, slow, indecisive or lack systems and leadership. And I think a lot of the critique seems to come down to the fact that even if it was an internal audit acting as policeman to find these issues, already heard from Andrew today saying that the finance function looks to be in really good shape with really good people doing really good work. So what is it then that the finance function's doing that other departments may not have been doing, which have led to this sort of overall critique of where we are? So it's the two, it's the diverse backgrounds, and it's the fact that the finance function seems to be very good, which would be my credit for. But other areas may not have been so good.
So on catering for diverse backgrounds, so that finding that's highlighted there at 7.8 specifically in relation to the way that households were supported in the immediate aftermath of the fire. The example here is around not being able to provide all times, so in Ramadan. So now when we do emergency response, which is what this is about, our information gathering, so our templates, which would, if you have a household, which would go through what their needs were, includes information about religious observance, around any specific needs that they would have, so that would be picked up both at the individual household discussion level. The other thing is that the resilience team do work with community organisations. And last time we did a big exercise, we actually had rest centres, community rest centres were part of the exercise, so it wasn't a closed shop at council only. We had 4 or 5 different community organisations, at least 3 of whom were ones that had opened their doors in the immediate aftermath of Grenfell. So it's that combination between the relationships with communities around emergency response. We had an emergency response conference for community organisations 3 or 4 months ago. So it's a combination of that and actually just making sure that our systems and processes and our staff are trained in a way that means that we're offering support and humanitarian assistance that's culturally appropriate.
So if I can just
Yeah,
clarify, sorry, Jen. I know that was very specific in that case. I'm asking more broadly about what we do for diverse backgrounds for all services, not just for Grenfell.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry,
So no, that's fine. So the inquiry itself makes a finding of racial and social discrimination in respect of the response. More broadly around housing policy, it says that it was outside of its terms of reference to look at racial and social discrimination, because it was something that a number of witnesses to the inquiry gave. And before my time here, but the previous Chief Executive, Barry, arranged for the Equalities and Human Rights Commission to do an external review of the Council's work on equalities, diversity and inclusion. And that report is still available, out of which came the Equality Strategy, which is also a statutory requirement under the Equality Act, but Council didn't have one before. So it now has that. We're actually just in a moment in the process of refreshing that work and doing our fairness action plan, which we're just at community consultation on at the moment, which is will fulfil that function of equality strategy. And the whole approach to the way that we work around putting communities first, the expectation of our staff, 44% of whom are from ethnically diverse backgrounds, our workforce, which is similar to many councils in London, that expectation of our workforce to be working with the community, and you know, it's about 10% of our workforce from all over. So, but I wouldn't want to seem in any way complacent about that. But that's the work that's going on at the moment.
Okay, I think that's probably a good place to pause it, unless anybody else has got anything really specific to mention. So I've just made a few notes here of some of the key things, and Maxim, I think you have. So I think as a committee, we need to do a bit more work around the risk register and find time to really understand that more. There's something about how we as a committee ensure competency and confidence in staff who do particular specialist roles. I think there's areas where how we review the relationship with other organisations and outside bodies. So there's no answers here, I'm afraid. There's lots of questions. A review of what comes before this committee, particularly in terms of reports that we are expected to focus on. We touched quite a bit on internal audit. I think there's some more discussion for us to have an internal audit as a committee, and how we work with that and how we are confident in our relationship with that. And also, I just think that we need a bit of, I think, some external perception about how we work and how other audit and risk or audit as far as the committee's work, maybe some specialist people to talk about specialist areas.
Yeah.
Now, how we do all of that within our meetings or whatever, I don't know. But that's something that we, I think, need to look at as a committee. So with that, Maxine, and with the notes you've made, thank you for joining us tonight. This is going to be an ongoing conversation. But I hope we've given you something that feeds into the eventual report from our perspective. And clearly, a lot of these things will carry on our issue. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you, committee, for those observations. Just for reference, we didn't have any members of the public here to contribute to that anyway. So we're going to have a 2-minute leg stretch, simply because I need a quick 2-minute leg stretch. While the final team get together, and then we'll move on. Okay. Be great. Anyone that ever peer phone?
Have you got any thumb screws that you can? That's the one didn't get on. Channel that disappointment about. No, coffee was chairman after he said, chairperson said, on the sides.
Yeah.
They needed.
We need EY to give us the assurance of the LKFA action on next week. They promised it on. Promised it on Thursday.
Oh, okay.
Probably is you're the only ones that have been husband. No one else is going to sign.
Why were the only ones going to have?
No one else is ready. So no one else is ready to sign their accounts yet.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. So because we're ahead.
Yeah,
We're being held up.
Oh, you're not ahead. You're on time. It's not even
Because we're on time and everybody else is behind.
They promised us. They promised it the last day of the audit, so we can turn it around to get it on that day. We can't sign
So
without.
it's Christine. Is the finance director.
Is it?
Yeah. Rather than phone Christine. So what? I mean, if they're.
I mean,
So
they're
what do they need? What do they want? Yeah. Well, I don't know. Need was over there.
No, I know, but it's whether they. Yes. So the EIS. So I guess the question would be: Are the auditors EY going to provide the assurance letter?
Yeah, we see that.
On as agreed on 30th.
Yeah.
Just don't point everybody.
To publish the accounts.
So that
not
all looking like
The assurance letter, well, you gave it a number then.
IS 19. They should know what that is.
So this is
LPFS. IS 19.
yeah. So this is the assurance that their accounts are.
Yeah, because you've got a share of the you've got people in the scheme, so it's up to you.
Yeah.
So get it every year because we did it last year.
Okay, so we now move on to item number 5 on the agenda, the financial statement of accounts and annual governance statement 2023-24. So you've got the council's draft financial statement of accounts, which was published on the 31st of May. We considered that at the committee at our last meeting. So the finalised statement of accounts and annual governance statement has now been published, and the committee has been asked to approve the statement of accounts for 2023-24 financial year, and to agree to delegate final approval of the accounts to the Executive Director for Resources. Can I ask who's going to lead on this? Nina, to lead on present this paper, please.
So, like you just said, Chair, we implemented the accounts in July. Since then, between July and now, the auditors have been auditing the accounts. So we've brought forward now the audited version of the accounts. Any adjustments that are being picked up during the audit are reflected in these accounts now, and the audit findings report, which is the next item on the agenda, will basically go through those changes, which will pick up and cover. There has been a change to the pack here on the annual governance statement on page 145. So I've just got here. Sorry, just not highlighted pages are the changes the executive made. So
It's not a change that they've got, is it?
no, it's just
Alex, it's just a totally Alex.
so
Track changes.
Which page is
Oh,
page 145.
So it's 157 and
Just to be exactly clear what was given as notes.
So this is the amended page,
Yes.
which you don't have. The page that we had in the accounts has been updated. The highlighted amount, and that is just the updated pieces. It's just text and the chief exec wanted just the mention of the Grenfell inquiry at the top there. So there's nothing more in that. We missed the dispatch deadline, so we'll put in the pack.
Okay, so those amendments just are being made on the final one, but they are, there's no significant issues that have been amended in here. They're just presentation issues for that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's just improvements to the wording or just the extra information. And it was just also to point out that I think in terms of the accounts, there are a lot of local authorities haven't yet even started their accounts audits for 23-24, so a number of years. So just to let the committee know that we are up to date in this regard in terms of getting our accounts ready and audited. Yeah, that's about it, I'd say.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. And questions, comments, please, on what is a very solid and very good statement. That's Gordon.
I just had a couple of questions on page 84, going with the report. Yeah. We talk about insurance, and yet on page 69 of the report, we talk about tax. Should that note the balance sheet refer to the tax about the second insurance level?
What number?
Big 84. Big number. Big 84. Small 72.
So from now on in, folks, can we talk big numbers
Big
rather than little numbers?
Oh, sorry, bigger. Big 84, small 72.
So could you just repeat your question?
Page 72 of your audit patch. So it says insurance.
Yes, got that.
And
So just pause, because Councillor Guardian already confused us with mentioning page 72. So we are working on large page 84.
Yeah.
that's the provision of.
Under 31
And elsewhere, they talk about that you now insert a self-insure cap. In this
So
report.
we've always had a self-insurance cap, but we just clarified the language in the accounts this year.
So should we not be referencing the fact that we now have this cap in the notes?
So that's for heritage assets, as Shane said, not for the assets that
So it's not for anything else.
Yeah.
Was it clear in that text that it's heritage
I believe
assets?
so.
It's in the heritage assets notes,
Yeah.
so that's where it's been said. And then the next page, 85, following the heading with text, the Grenfell settlement. The second paragraph, although a settlement was announced, I actually looked at that and I thought that note should surely be under the second and paragraph 32 of the Grenfell, as in the provision is made in the first sentence, but the contingent liability is the second sentence. What hasn't been called out. So I queried whether that sentence should be in the contingent liability note. No, it's sitting up in the. No, I think before the foundation direction, we did refer to these costs in contingent liabilities because we know and because we've got the capitalisation direction, we have a figure. Those costs are now included within the provision. So we have got £42 million at the end of March as the provision. That's still unused of the £75 million capitalisation direction. And so the intention is that any further costs which we're expecting now that should be coming off of those are the potential liabilities that are encompassed in the £75 million that we applied for. The contingent liability here in Brentford is now just reflecting the criminal charge.
And some outstanding claims. So the first reference in the top of page 85 to get to by.
I guess I get the first sentence. I don't have an issue with that.
So
the second sentence I was.
Yes. So the settlement was agreed in May 23. That's what was paid to the legal representatives of those who claimed, and they've been paid their money. What we haven't yet settled is the legal costs of legal advisors in settling that claim. So we know we've got to pay. We don't know how much yet. Whereas the second note under 32 relates to claims that are outstanding we haven't yet reached a settlement on.
Yes. All right, thank you. Understood. And then on page 165, as I understand, the Restorative Justice Programme has been renamed the Grenfell Support Programme at the request for.
Yeah.
Sorry. So I think there are too many mentions over here. And I did question whether we should be mentioning the public inquiry phase 2 had been published and we were now considering our response.
Which I think in the sheet you have, the page, small page 1.5 at the top paragraph does refer to that. So that's GPT.
Yes.
So I suppose it's there, well, it should be there as well.
Or you could alternatively
Yes,
refer back
yes,
to
yes,
section
yeah.
1. Thank you. That was changed.
Different costs to the team opposite. You're the knowledge in the room. Go for it. Questions, comments.
I mean, I've got lots of detailed questions that I've given, so
Okay.
I don't know how you want to take those forward. I don't want to really take up time now.
No, so we'll get answers to those detailed
Okay.
questions you've got. Is there anything big detailed question you have? Anything that we as a committee ought to really reflect on?
See. I just had some difficulties tying in certain figures. And in the CIES, change from the July draft was 2.429 million improved. The auditor said it was 3.358 million. I just wondered what the changes were. I think let them come back to me on these things. I think
Those questions. Andrew, you were not.
Well, no, I'm just thinking really. We've had a set of accounts to prepare. We've had them audited. We've got an audit finding report. Probably, as a member of the committee, I'm going to rely on that process and concentrate on the makes the external auditors down,
Right.
rather than the review. I think we've gone past the point of reviewing the documents. Liz, you pass your comments.
That's my comments.
Yes.
I just need some clarifications.
Okay, then.
I just have a very quick question. Page 166, big 166, 4.1. That's no, there's a grammatical error on the language. Grenfell was the key risk was identified.
Yeah. Yeah.
4.1.
Yeah.
The wording Grenfell was the key risk was identified. It's grammatically incorrect.
It's a typo, isn't it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think Andrew, that's a very good point. We've gone through this in quite a lot of detail already. So I'm going to ask the committee to approve the 2023-24 audit statement of accounts. Approved.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you. And we then move now to item number 6. But just before that, just to go on record, just a thank you to the finance team
Yes,
for all the work
yeah.
you've done.
Yes.
We've heard that this is a
Yes.
really good report. We've heard that we are one of the few councils to have reached this stage. So on record to congratulate your team and pass that on from this committee. Thank you very much.
Well done.
Let's move on now to item number 6, the external auditor's report. This is a external auditor's report from Grant Thornton. So can I ask Paul to I can just say Paul because it's either one of you, Paul.
That's true, yeah, that's not our real names. Which makes it easier.
Paul, to introduce his paper, please.
So we've got 4 papers here. I'll take them in turn. But so the 4 papers we've got 2 audit findings, one for the council, one for the pension fund. And we've got 2 representation letters that were asked to be approved as well. So if I take the reports in turn, I wasn't proposing to turn the page or anything. I'll take them as read. I just wanted to put out a few points. So making sure that I don't err and I use your correct numbers. Big 180. The headlines around the audit findings report. At the time of issuing the report, when it went to the papers, we explained that there were some areas outstanding in terms of things that we were still waiting on. I can confirm all of those things are now done, with the exception that we are waiting on the assurances from Ernst & Young as the auditors of the LPFA pension fund, of which the council has vision that. And once we receive that and the representation letter that we're going to cover, we'll be in a position to sign the financial statements. As we report, it will be an unmodified audit opinion, which is the one you want. In terms of the a reflection on the audit, I think it's been it's an audit that's gone well. So we started on time. We've had good engagement from the finance team. The draft set of accounts that we received for audit were of good quality. When we asked for audit evidence, it's provided promptly and it's good quality, which is enabling us to complete our audit on time and be able to bring this report to you. The reports under auditing standards, we're required to communicate a lot of things. I would probably just draw the committee's attention to some of the appendices that we have. So Appendix B, the action plan, which is page 211. We make reference to some recommendations that we raised during the course of the audit. None of them we would badge them as significant, but they are things that we have identified, and we have management responses to each of those. I wasn't proposing to go through them, but if any questions, we're happy to take them. We also have appendix on audit adjustments. There are essentially 4 types. There are the adjusted misstatements that we have on page 213, and there are a couple of those. There are then the misclassifications and disclosure changes on page 214. That's to a degree us throwing the kitchen sink and flagging absolutely everything that we've identified during the course of the audit. So there are a range of significance. Some of them are very, very minor, but we just put them in for information so you can see what's changed. There are also
and those have changed, have they? Because you say they had agreed.
Yes,
yeah,
they have changed. And that's, yes, so we have checked on this version, and we're doing a very, very final version as well before we sign. But yes, they have changed, or if they've been missed, they will change, but we don't envisage any being missed. And the final adjustments are the unadjusted misstatements. So that is where we identify things that are not material, and management take a view on why they do not want to make an adjustment. So there could be very good reasons. For example, we have one where we found a couple of errors in our sample testing on expenditure. So the only way to correct that would be to extrapolate, which is something that management would not want to do. We do the extrapolation from a reported perspective to assure you that if you were to extrapolate the errors, it would be immaterial. So I think it's fair action to not make an adjustment based on a couple of small errors. So I think we're happy with all the unadjusted misstatements. We asked the committee through the representation letter to confirm that you're signing the representation letter, confirm you're happy that why the unadjusted misstatements are not being made. So we're quite happy that the rationale for those, and we obviously work to materiality, so we report these to you. You choose not to correct them, that's absolutely fine.
And you're just you sort of said you are happy.
We are happy with them.
Chosen not there.
Yeah, and we're asking you in your rep letter, you're basically agreeing and saying we're aware of these and we are happy that they don't materially impact the financial statements. We're happy that we're not adjusting, the reasons that we set out. So I'm happy to take any questions on this first report. I'm happy.
Yeah, okay. So, members of the committee, any questions on this first report?
Up to you.
Just a very quick question. Big page 212 on cybersecurity, following up on prior year recommendation. The last issue of risk then. I know the final sentence that the council doesn't have a formal data classification policy and supporting controls on cyber, and they then put one in place. Does part of your audit look to check to see whether our cyber security controls are actually adequate for the job they're supposed to do? Or because this just looks like you just said they've got a policy in place, not whether the policy is effective and does what it's supposed to do.
That's true to a degree. So as part of our IT work, we will look at the controls, of which some would be around cyber that impact on the financial systems that then produce financial statements. So the remit of our remit clearly wouldn't be as wide as say internal audit if they were doing a review on that. We would do it from the perspective of, is there a risk to financial statements? So it is to a higher level. So it probably is more around, have you got the things in place that we would expect to see? Not necessarily, are they, well, we wouldn't rely on those controls. Are they operating effectively? So we would, if they were controls that were fundamental to the financial systems and the accounts, how it spits out, we would review that, but we wouldn't necessarily, for other things, we wouldn't delve into the policy, for example. We'd be most interested in whether you had one.
You, Anna?
Thank you. You put out two significant amendments that are having to be made in the two large adjustments. Sorry, it's actually the main report. It's page 173, moving on to 174. Given the conversations that we've just had about relying on third parties and this was an external valuer. I take it you external valuer? Yes. What went wrong there? As in, did you check whether it was the valuer then, or because it was you who picked up as opposed to our internal team? Is that correct?
Yeah,
So,
on the-
so,
Details on page.
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
complication. So could you just talk it through a bit, because that's quite significant, and given what we were saying about relying on people to get things right, given that we've brought the expertise in and it's wrong.
Yes, I mean, we found, I guess from our perspective, we're satisfied that they're isolated. So it wasn't indicative of a wider failure. But I think from how the council assured that around the use of an expert, for example, that's probably a management question I would have thought.
So how do we avoid something like that happening again, or either specifically for assets next year, or indeed other things? Are there questions you need to put forward?
Yes, so definitely with our external value. I think in this particular one, it was identified that it was school. The valuation was based on the school being assumed to be a mainstream school rather than specialist school. So it's quite a technical thing on the value side. We are looking with the valuers to try and do more work, working with our property team as well to make sure the information that's fed in and things like that correlate. There is a property evaluations also do go to our property team to check good review as well when they come in. So I think it's just probably put more rigour around that and doing a bit more work to make sure more things like this, if they are there and picked up or just, dealt with. But we are doing more work. We've arranged meetings with the property team to go through things like this already. Because I think this sort of area is a bit of a problem one when you've got big numbers as well.
Paul, do you just want to comment on any of that in terms of what would happen in other organisations, or that? Because it is a difficult one, isn't it?
It is. It's not uncommon. It's not uncommon. They're obviously valuing a lot of assets, and they are technical. There's a lot of judgment, which is why you use a specialist, and which is why we use a specialist to support us in our work, because it's a technical area where assumptions can well, not just you can make a mistake with the assumption, but also that there can be different views, different values will treat things differently. So there's you have to have the balance in act of making sure that you need to use a valuer, but that you've got confidence and you're assured that the work that they're doing for you is as it should be. So I guess how do you do that? I guess it's through when you're doing your when you're procuring those services, assured that you're using valuers that have specialisms in the sector. And the other bit is then how do you, I guess, is what controls do you have in terms of your own assurance from what information that they're giving you back, because they're an expert of management. It's still the accounts still belong to management, but in this instance, this is quite a niche and quite specific. So I can understand why it wouldn't be picked up, because it's it's a specialist area, which is why you're using a valuer to make those.
And just the impact on the accounts.
Well, with assets like this, the impact on the accounts will affect the balance sheet in most cases. The one where you would want to make absolutely clear that there was rigor and that they were as right as they could be would be around investment properties, because you're valuing them every year, and the movement on them are going through the income expenditure rather than going through the reserves and the nature of these operational assets. So that would be the one where you want to make sure those assets are valued as they should be.
So just a quick question there, maybe for Mike and for David, because just to understand the process flow from what Shaheen said here, you've got the accounts that are responsible, the accounts team who are doing the accounts, you've got the property team who are responsible for employing a third party to value, which then comes through to the accounts. And then three of you and others put these together and will be checked by the auditors. If property team and the external third party who do the value give you information that's incorrect and then you put it into the accounts, it's the accounts team put it into the accounts, because the property team and the third party can only put it to hear what you tell them, which is then picked up by the auditors. So in the private sector, the ownership of things that go into the accounts must be with the accounts. And whether that means that the accounts team, or probably all three of you on the end of the table, are sending information to the property team to say this is a school and it's a SEND school, and then the property team sends that to the external valuer so they can see that that's what you require, and that will change on all of the processes that you do, because somebody else will have to do the work, but it has to ultimately come back to you. And if you don't take ownership, the value will come in garbage in, garbage out in computers. If you don't ask the right question for people downstream, they won't ask what you require. And then we won't be able to pick this up in the future. It's only because we have an auditor that's switched on as to be able to find these things that then get raised to us. But across the system, it must be right that anything that goes into the accounts, when you're asking somebody else to do something, there's probably in the private sector, you'd have a front sheet saying, make sure you ask for these 7 things. So when it goes out, those 7 things have to be there.
Yeah, so I think the first thing is the procurement of the external values through us. So we procure the valuer, and so we will direct the valuer to value properties.
So sorry to interrupt then. So you asked the valuer to value a SEND school, and they didn't value a SEND school. Is that right?
No, I think it was put as I think they thought it was a mainstream school, but it was a SEND school. I don't think they particularly went to that property to actually physically value it. But my point is that we procured the valuer, as in finance, and then we will instruct the valuer to do the valuations. When those reports come back to us, we will do some initial checks and challenges. But obviously, because we're property experts, we will get our property team involved to review the valuations as well. So
I think, Councillor, did we ask the valuers to value a SEND school, or did we ask them to value a school?
It's a pretty straightforward question. And if it came from the finance team, you would know it was a SEND school, because you're asking them to value the SEND school.
Just say, we need, if we don't get the brief right, you don't get the answer.
That's correct. I mean, but I think what Shaheen is saying is it is absolutely owned by us as the accounts team. It isn't. And Sheila mentioned property. We need to use property, and we need to use an external valuer to make sure we get it right. And in this case, obviously, it wasn't right, but the system has, in a sense, worked because it has been picked up by the auditors. So, and that is the last kind of control, in a sense.
I mean, but the auditors doesn't check every single item in the accounts. That's where I'm coming from. So if there are 300 things in the accounts, they only check 10. Then what about the others? You see, that's why I'm asking the question in terms of management process.
Well, there's controls in place, aren't there, to make sure that the figures in here are correct. So, as you correctly say, some of them depend on. It does depend how you ask the question, absolutely, and it does depend on the third party and how they do the work in some of these cases. In others, the whole thing could be done by the accounts team. Obviously, if we're taking numbers from the accounting system, there won't often be a third party involved, albeit there will actually be Hampshire who provide the system.
Okay, I'm gonna leave it there and ask you
it's
to move
working,
on.
but it's a mistake.
No, I'm gonna move on now to the pension one, please.
One word doesn't make sense. Sorry, it's page 187. The modern equivalent asset calculations of the primary school were incorrect, or with nursery services, the value is mistakenly excluded the number of nursery requirement needed to calculate the gross MEA value as understated. Can you just take that away and revisit it? Because I don't understand it appears twice in the drafting.
This is the fourth bullet point up from the bottom.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Can we now move on?
Yeah.
Pensions, please.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so the second report is, so it's the same format. Again, to reiterate that the work that was outstanding at the time of issuing this report, that work had been concluded. So we signed both off at the same time. So once we were able to ensure that the financial statement, the major accounts are signed off, or signed up pension fund. If the report follows the same format, I think it was quite a straightforward audit in terms of, you know, the set of accounts that we had were of good quality. We were able to get the evidence we needed to undertake our testing and to get to the position where we are. But if there's anything more to say, I'm happy to take a question on the report.
We won't going to have a member of the pension committee with us tonight, unfortunately. He had to send his apologies today. So do we have any questions or form on the pensions?
Yeah, just quickly on 230, why is the risk of audit expenditure recognised only for the pension fund and not the council?
It's the nature of what the council does compared to what the pension fund does. So the council, there would be more opportunity to manipulate the financial position of the council through expenditure recognition. So either taking things in or out in the pension fund, the nature of what the pension fund does.
But it's recognised in the pension fund and not the council. That's what I'm saying. It's the other way around.
Yeah. So the nature. Yes. Yeah. Apology. Yeah. So we've assessed it as a risk on the council ones. Yeah. So we assess it for both, but on the council, we based on the work that we've done and the fact that we don't have to mandate it, we've not had it as significant risk. So we've done the same amount of work, but for a pension fund, we've taken the feedback that actually that there is potentially more risk to manipulate expenditure. It's easy to do compared to revenue, so you could do one or the other. But yeah, so it's a different risk assessment. So
more risk than pension fund or less risk?
More risk, you say?
More risk from our So we've considered it. We've not rebutted the risk around expenditure recognition on the pension fund.
Okay. Well, if you're allowed to correct you, because we need to leave your first statement.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments on the pension fund, please? Okay.
Just a quick question. Because the pension fund, you haven't got all the details, you need to certify the accounts for the pension. Is that right? You're waiting for information from us. Yeah, that's correct.
No, that's the LPFA pension fund that goes into so not the HC. Yeah, and then the certification is the point around the objections, which stops that.
Where are you on your value to money?
The work is done, so we need to be able to issue our opinion. You need to be able to conclude on whether there would be a significant weakness in arrangement. So the work is done, the report is going to be coming to the next meeting, but the actual the work is substantially done. We're playing catch up, I guess, because of the delay in growth. That meant that we were a couple of years behind, so we've been catching up. But next year, I believe the new code will state that both reports have to go to the same meeting. I believe it all needs to come forward next year.
So can you just go back to the pension one, just explain about the certificate and the timing going forward on that?
Yes, so the audit certificate is the bit that says everything is done. So the accounts, value for money, whole of government accounts, which is a return we do, and considering any use of our powers. So we've accepted an objection this year, which we haven't had one in a couple of years, around service charges. So we will be following that up and considering whether or not we want to take any actions based on what's been requested. What that means is we can sign off the opinion on the accounts. The certificate. So basically, there's a line at the end of the opinion that will say you've not been able to issue the certificate. It doesn't impact you in any way. So what you're measured against is have you signed off your accounts? If it's something that's held open, it's not uncommon when you have objections. And the certificate wasn't issued when the value for money. So for Grenfell, you had to only have a certificate for several years. So we've caught up. So we're on 22-23 certified. So this one will be done when the objection work is done. I explained earlier, one of the key things in the past used to be that people could object while the certificate was open. So it meant that you could do all the work and then someone could put an objection, it would delay it further. That no longer can happen. So there's less risk to you by having it open. You obviously want to get it done and close it off, but the risk that previously existed, that someone could then put in an objection, no longer happens.
And then just a final question, in terms of sort of nationally, where are we in terms of 23-24 accounts with other authorities generally being signed off? That sort of balance.
Yeah, so my guess working in London, you will be the first. I don't think anyone else will be signing in by the deadline. And nationally, last year it was 1% or whatever it was. The figure won't be dissimilar this year, so it will be a handful of audits that will be signed off.
So just going back to objections, I think you commented in the report that there have been more objections this year than in past years, of which you've upheld one to take forward. Was there a theme, or was it a various area of the council? And is it something that we actually should be looking at, taking away as an action?
There wasn't a theme. It was over several. So there were elected questions. So people asked things of which they were either not appropriate to ask us as external auditors, so they weren't within our powers. So we redirected the person to the right. What the only thing was they all came very, very near the end, very in the southern block, which would suggest that somebody, I don't know, I couldn't make it. That was just a bit odd that we didn't have any questions at all the last couple of years, that suddenly we got lots and we got them.
And when is the question an objection? Or it sounds like you're saying questions were asked. Does a question mean an objection?
No, so an elector can ask questions that could, and then if we were to accept the question as it will become an objection, essentially. So we were able, so we wouldn't, some would be straightforward, right, this is not within our powers, you need to speak to the ombudsman, or actually you could just try speaking to this person, or we can't do anything about it. So they have it's enshrined in law that they have a right to ask for things, but there's only one that we consider has met the bar in the legislation that we would take that forward.
Good, thank you. So on this paper, members are asked to review the report.
So I just wanted to say, Sean, because you did congratulate the team on getting the accounts first, as Paul mentioned, but it's also down to the auditors.
I said first, but go on.
They can say first, but it is.
We are first. Well done.
And that is down to the auditors as well. So I just wanted to say that and our relationship with Grandfolks. So good. It's important to know that.
And that works for the good of the council and for our residents. So thank you. Good. So members are asked to review the report from the external auditors on the audit of the council's 23-24 statement of accounts. That's for information. So we'll close that there. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you again, Paul, for your attendance at these meetings and your clear answers that you give us. So thank you.
So you're happy to, so the committee says that the representation letter for it to be signed by the management itself, yeah.
So have we done all the governance stuff? There's a signing off and
Just wanted to clarify, the committee is happy to delegate and sign on the accounts to the executive director of resources. That would this.
okay. So does the committee agree to delegate the final approval of the accounts to the executive director of resources, subject to consultation with the chair?
Yeah.
Yes.
Agreed.
So then we move to item number 7, the committee work programme and action tracker. You've got a supplementary paper because it wasn't contained in the main papers. So to take the tracker first, any comments on the tracker, the actual tracker? Again, Councillor.
Implementation, the red item, the implementation of the Oracle.
I think, Chair, on 1A1, the intention is to bring a report to next week to the committee.
Yeah, that came out in our discussions earlier on. I think we need to, we need time on that to really look at it. Any other comments on the tracker? If the forward plan, I guess we've had discussions tonight that might impact the forward plan, but in terms of the way it stands here, is there anything you want to comment on it as much as in the papers for this meeting?
I was really just wondering what an annual health and safety report is really going to give you that's any granularity, because it's annual.
I think we will take that away, as I said in the previous reports, about what information the committee would like, so if we get something to well in advance.
Yeah.
So that as well, I'll come into that as well.
And I think we need, as a committee, to also tell the report authors what we need to be assured of in their reports, because one gets a sense for all the understand reason that there might be a bit of cut and paste goes on in some of these reports, and that may be okay. It may need a bit more.
Just a quick question. In relation to Oracle, which is 181, on the page 262, we've got Oracle project support the update. Given what we've heard about IT systems being certainly a big risk, if the IT system goes down, we're in trouble. And should we be getting, or should the chair be getting updates more often as they go to the management team often?
So there are regular updates to the management team, and we are moving to a cloud-based solution, which actually gives us much more security in terms of cyber security and continuity of service. The programme's on track to implement and go live on the 1st of April. I think it's important we bring a report to the committee next time, give you some chance to see it, make sure we're doing the right things. So a lot of what we do is learning from what's happened elsewhere. So there's been lots of high-profile cases in the media around local authorities who've taken a long time, lots of cost to implement Oracle. So we've taken what's called an adopt, not adapt approach. So we're taking the system pretty much as is where we can, so that we're making sure we're implementing as effectively as it's meant to be intended to be implemented as possible. So myself and others from internal have been involved through the process. I'd like to give that critical friend constructive challenge approach as well, which is a good practice in some projects. And there's a really strong, robust governance that Lisa Taylor, who's Director of Financial Management, is the Senior Responsible Officer. Like is the programme sponsor, and gets regular reports as well on the progress of the programme. So I think it'd be good for us to bring that back to you next time to give you that assurance.
Okay. I think there is some understandable concern in the committee.
And given our history with the previous two.
And as you say, it may be fully on track.
But we need to bring that to you.
Anything else on the future?
Who is the programme manager for that? That's not you, is it?
No, so Lisa Taylor is the Senior Responsible Officer, and there's a dedicated programme director called Phil Rice, who's been brought in to help us to run the programme. He's done lots of successful implementations in London and elsewhere.
We'll cover a report from them.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, we've got that
Yeah,
report, yes.
yeah.
Could I just ask, what sort of data is out there that the leadership team gets, either in terms of key performance indicators or charts that light up red or green, that actually it would be useful for the committee to get as they come out, so that we can see issues and say, actually, we'd like to see that one because it's already flashing orange.
I understand that the 6 monthly corporate performance report, which goes to the leadership team, so we can make sure that's circulated to members of the committee to see as well.
Okay. Any other questions on that? In that case, then we conclude the meeting of the committee this evening. The next meeting of the Audit and Transparency Committee will take place at 6:30 on Monday, the 9th of December. Thank you to all concerned. Thank you to the officers for being here. Thank you to committee members.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Good night.
Thank you.
That's right.
Do you know?
That's right.
You're telling us that it's good. Yeah.